Hello everybody, it is nysclips and welcome back to another video. In 2019, talks around my high school and around social media started brewing that a new show was coming out starring sweet little Disney Zendaya as a drug addict. I thought this was pretty exciting at the time because Zendaya's Shake It Up co-star Bella Thorne had already started moving away from Disney and starting to do some more grown-up roles. So I was like, okay, let's see what Zendaya can bring to the table. In June of 2019, HBO dropped the first episode of Euphoria for free on YouTube. And when I tell you, I will never forget the night I watched that free pilot episode because genuinely nothing could have prepared me for that Jules and Cal Jacobs motel scene. Yeah. But nonetheless, me and my friends still tuned in to every episode, and from there on out, I became one of the 6.6 million average per episode viewers that the show's first season gained across all platforms. When this show came out, it really did seem like it was just an era-defining trailblazer. Everybody was into it. Not only did the show have a good plot, but the wardrobe, the makeup, and the soundtrack was all so unique and identifiable. The cinematography, the camera work, and the color palette of season 1 was so beautiful and so out of this world. Season 3 of the hit HBO drama is set to premiere on April 12th, and despite all of the success that season 1 received, the success unfortunately did not last. Euphoria is definitely no longer the show it used to be. This show went from being a global phenomenon that launched the careers of so many actors and inspired an entire era of aesthetic, music, fashion, and pop culture to being a complete flop that nobody really even wants to see anymore, and the actors barely even want to participate.
But a new season is coming though, right?
So they say, yeah. That's what they told me.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure I can speak for a lot of us when I say we're all just tuning in for the shits and giggles, you know what I mean? But I know a lot of you guys are fans of the show as I am, and hey, we're still looking forward to season 3. So as the season 3 premiere is right around the corner, I definitely wanted to recap and discuss the show for you guys because a lot of you may have forgotten, or you want a quick refresher, or you just want to discuss and analyze the show a little bit. So that is what we will be doing today. So let's get into it. The show opens and we hear the narrations of our main character, Rue Bennett, and right from the jump, we can immediately tell that this girl hates her life. She's like, I was so happy and resting in my mom's uterus, but against my will, I was violently pushed out into the cruel world, and now here I am. And yeah, life has indeed been very hard on Rue. From a very young age, she has struggled quite a bit mentally. Like, she's had panic attacks, she gets diagnosed with OCD, ADD. So not only is there a lot going on up there, but Rue also lost her father at 14 years old. So to get by, Rue abuses drugs. And the way that she describes how she feels on the drugs, it's very intriguing, and I feel like this show is like my first time being able to truly understand drug addicts. It made me understand that like this is not just a thing that people do for fun. Like, maybe it started that way for some people, but the way that Rue describes it, it really made me understand like, oh, this is genuinely her way of getting through life. It's the only thing that makes her mind go quiet, but even though it's what she uses to keep living, that very thing could be the thing that ends up killing her if she doesn't stop. And it does not only just affect her, it quite literally affects everyone in her life. Because when you're that reliant on something, it turns you into a very selfish person. And even though Rue is, you know, a very sweet girl, her addiction turns her into that person and affects the different people in her life, such as her mother Leslie and her little sister Gia. The show starts at the summer before junior year. And at this time, Rue is getting out of rehab from a really bad overdose. As Rue is driving home from rehab, she sees this girl right here named Jules Vaughn. Even though Rue is exiting her rehab program, she actually has zero intention of staying clean. So immediately after she gets home from rehab, she hits up her friend and her drug dealer, Fez. Fez is literally the most chill, non-judgmental guy ever, and Rue is honestly so lucky that this guy is her drug dealer, because if he was any other type of guy, any other type of drug dealer, she literally doesn't even pay him. Like, she owes Fez so much money, and throughout the season she also just exhibits some very annoying behavior towards Fez. And he also has a partner slash little brother named Ashtray who is like 11 years old. It's pretty hilarious. at least in season 1. In season 2, it's not so hilarious. As Rue is doing her drug deal with Fez, these two other guys named Nate Jacobs and his friend McKay drive by. As soon as Nate Jacobs opens his mouth, he is immediately just the most disgusting human being. He is yelling obscenities as he drives by Jules on her bike. He's talking about how many girls he's gonna at McKay's party that he's throwing later that night. But here's the kicker. When Nate's on-again, off-again girlfriend Maddie Perez screws someone else at the party, he can't handle it. He goes crazy. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Rue returns home from her drug deal with Fez, and immediately her mother Leslie starts questioning her. She's like, where have you been? You're doing drugs again. I don't trust you. And as Rue and Leslie start arguing, Rue's younger sister Gia is looking very upset in the background. Obviously, every kid and every young teenager wants their household to be stable with minimal arguing. And, you know, as a younger sister, it's very hard seeing your older sister who you look up to. It's very difficult seeing her clash with their mom. But something that was even more difficult for Gia was finding Rue passed out and convulsing on her bedroom floor that summer. So like I mentioned, that summer before junior year, Rue had suffered a really bad drug overdose, and Gia was actually the one who unfortunately found Rue. So yeah, when Rue gets home from that drug deal with Fez, Leslie actually makes Rue complete a drug test. She's not clean, right? So in order to trick her mom into thinking she is clean, she goes to her childhood best friend Lexi Howard's house, and Rue asks Lexi to pee in a bottle for her so that she can use Lexi's pee as her own to trick her mom into thinking that she is not doing drugs. Whew. Remember when I said the addiction turned her into a very mean and selfish person? Yeah. So anyways, that night we have McKay's party that I was talking about. Too much crazy shit goes down at this party. Let's go one by one. Number 1, McKay wants to hook up with this girl, Cassie Howard, who is Lexi's sister. McKay likes Cassie, but before the party, Nate and all the guys are just being really disgusting and saying some awful things about Cassie. Like, they're calling her a slut, they're calling her a whore. Nate is telling McKay like, oh, you should just her like the whore she is, and then you should dump her. But McKay seems to respect Cassie a lot more than that. So McKay and Cassie, they do end up hooking up together at the party, and they like each other. Number 2, before coming to McKay's party, the new girl in town, Jules, she goes on a little side quest, which is a hookup at a random motel. Okay, so she has been talking to this man right here online. This man, he calls himself Dominant Daddy online, okay? And he is indeed a daddy. Not a daddy like daddy, but a daddy like he is someone's daddy. Okay, but just know before the party, Jules met up with this man at the motel and they had sex. Number 3, Rue arrives to McKay's party. She snorts her little drugs and the room literally starts spinning. I'm not even gonna hold you guys. This scene is really cool. It's one of my favorites in the whole show. Number 4, this girl right here named Kat Hernandez, who is best friends with Maddie. For some reason, she is hanging out with this group of loser guys at the party who question her about how many people she's slept with. Kat lies and she says she slept with a lot of men, even though she's a virgin.
Yeah, I'm a fucking savage.
And it's just very weird and awkward. I mean, it's kind of realistic though. Like, I've definitely witnessed conversations like this happening in high school. But Kat does end up losing her virginity at this party. She sleeps with some random loser from another school. Number 5, like I mentioned, Maddie and Nate are this on-again, off-again couple. So at this point, they are off and they're not on good terms. So to get back at Nate, Maddie ends up having sex with this guy right here named Tyler. So Maddie and Tyler, they have sex in the pool, right in the middle of the pool for everyone at the party to see. So when Nate sees this, he gets very angry, like he completely flips out. He goes into the kitchen, he starts yelling, he's like, everybody get the f out. And then Jules makes the mistake of making eye contact with him. You know, like when your mom is mad at the general household, so you have to avoid making eye contact with her or else she will get mad at specifically you. That's kind of like what has happened here. Jules makes eye contact with Nate while he's angry and yelling at everyone. So he turns to Jules and he gets all up in her face, makes a big scene. So then Jules decides to pull a knife out on him. She's like, you wanna hurt me? You wanna hurt me? I'm invincible. And then she cuts herself with the knife. And the whole thing is just very bizarre. I'm just sitting there watching like, what? But Rue seems rather impressed by Jules. So after this, Rue decides to go up to Jules and talk to her for the first time. Immediately after meeting each other, Rue and Jules click and they get along very well. Rue rides on the back of Jules's bike home together with her. They clean up her wound. They lie in bed together. It's all very cutesy. Rue pretty much instantly falls for Jules. But speaking of Jules, remember this man she hooked up with at the motel before the party? Dominant daddy? Nate's daddy. So this is Nate's dad and his name is Cal Jacobs. Cal has always been a little freak. In fact, when Nate was only 11 years old, he went into Cal's office and he found a stash of Cal's sex tapes. So no wonder Nate is so fucked up. It's because of that, and from there on out, the most toxic man of toxic masculinity is born. A man who cannot function unless he's sticking to his strict diet or playing sports or has a girlfriend who lives up to his very specific checklist of hyper-feminine qualities, and he thinks he is her savior in knight in shining armor and gets off on the idea of depurifying her and owning her, essentially. So yeah, that is Nate Jacobs, and that is essentially the toxic relationship that he has to Maddie. First day of school begins. A teacher ends up calling on Rue to share a memory from the summer. Rue recalls a time where after Leslie and Gia pick her up from the hospital after her overdose, and the three of them are all in the car listening to Fly Me to the Moon. It's a very happy and heartwarming car ride, right? But some other memories from this summer start to flash through Rue's mind. These are memories where she is doing drugs, very heavily arguing with her mom, but also at the same time, there's other happy moments from the summer as well. Moments where Rue is in a more healthy state of mind and we get to see actually how loving and close she is with her mother and her sister without the weight of her addiction. But this scene, it's just really beautiful. Like Leslie is driving the car with the biggest smile on her face, singing with her daughter, when just the week prior, that same daughter was threatening her with a piece of glass to her face. But at the end of the day, despite everything, they're all there just singing their hearts out because they're family and they love each other and they are all they have in this world, especially after the loss of their father and Leslie's husband. Maddie, remember how she had sex with Tyler in the pool at McKay's party? Yeah, so now Maddie has decided to lie and say that she was blackout drunk while she was having sex with Tyler. So after this, Nate goes into his protector mode. Nate starts to literally stalk Tyler. He stalks him and then he breaks into his house and beats the absolute shit out of him. And before Nate violently beats up Tyler, he tells him to get on his knees. And I'm like, you're enjoying telling him to get on his knees a little too well. You're enjoying that a little bit too much. So not only this, but Nate also goes on another psychotic side quest. Nate ends up finding out that Jules had sex with his father. So he decides to catfish Jules online. And the crazy part is, the name that Nate chooses to catfish Jules with is Tyler. Yeah, so Jules starts chatting with Tyler and she starts to really fall for him. She falls for him harder and harder every single day that they talk. But also Rue is falling for Jules at the same rate. So we have a bit of an emotional conflict here, okay? One day Jules asks Rue to help her take some sexy photos for Tyler. Rue tries to pretend she's okay with it, but deep down she's really not. Deep down she really wishes that Jules were taking those photos for her. Later on that day, Rue shows up to Fez's house for some drugs. At this time, Fez is particularly very on edge, and he's legit begging Rue to leave the house because Fez's supplier, Mouse, is coming through and he does not want Rue in the house when Mouse gets there. Despite Fez's persistent efforts to get Rue to leave the house, she does not listen, okay? She's a drug fiend and she's like, I want drugs now, so no, I'm not leaving. So Rue is at the house when Fez's supplier, Mouse, comes in. Well, Mouse comes through, he does the drug deal with Fez, and then all of a sudden he turns to Rue and he makes Rue try some of his fentanyl. That's right. So Rue does the fentanyl. She's sitting there high as fuck And then Mouse tells Fez, all right, that's gonna be $600. So now Fez has to pay Mouse $600 for nothing that he wouldn't have had to pay if Rue had just left the house when he told her to. Kat. When Kat was a child, she had a boyfriend named Daniel, but after drinking a total of 72 pina coladas on vacation and gaining 20 pounds, Daniel dumped her. So Kat has always been a little bit insecure about her weight and also by her lack of sexual experience. But one thing about Kat is that she has always been pretty popular online. She writes anonymous erotica fan fiction and people online are really into her work. So like I said, Kat ended up losing her virginity to some guy at McKay's party. But the thing is, that loser was actually recording and he ends up spreading this video to the entire school. Kat's face is not in the video, so people don't know for sure who it is, but people are speculating that it is her. So when the principal calls her into the office and he's like, hey Kat, I've heard that there is a video of you spreading around the school. Kat asked the principal, is it because I'm fat that you're assuming it's me in the video? No girl, it's not because you're fat, it's because you're the only one in the school with that f***ass bob. But anyways, after this sex tape spreads, Kat is not gonna take any heckling from anyone. So she decides to reclaim that power by tapping into her anonymous online persona that writes sex stories online that everyone loves. So she taps into that persona and she starts posting sexual content of herself online, and then she rebrands herself and rebrands her style and starts dressing like a dominatrix who is confident in her weight and her sexual freedom. You go girl. Maddie, one night she ends up finding some pics on Nate's phone. I'ma just leave that right there. Do with that information what you will for now on. Rue. The main thing I relate to her on is that she is literally the definition of a yearner who feels her feelings to the max. One day, Rue actually kisses Jules, but Jules pulls away. So what does Rue do? She crashes out. Valid. I would have done the same thing if my crush pulled away when I kissed them. Okay, so Rue goes to Fez's house so that she can obtain some drugs, but after the mouse incident, no way does Fez want this girl in his house. Like, he's very upset with her, so he's like, no, I'm not letting you in. You're killing yourself. You're on a path to destruction. So here we get the iconic Rue crashing out, open the door scene. Honestly, we already could see the signs of Rue's emotional codependency on Jules very early on in this episode, because remember I said how Jules wanted Rue to take some sexy photos for her to send to Tyler. While Rue was helping her take these photos, Rue had actually been clean for 2 weeks. But the second Rue realizes how much she likes Jules, she starts to get scared and she realizes, I'm literally here helping the love of my life take photos for someone else. So after that, Rue goes downstairs and takes a pill, ruining her 2 weeks of sobriety. And then later on that night, when Rue is texting Jules and Jules isn't responding, she takes another pill. So honestly, you know, as much as we want to root for Rue and Jules, this is not a healthy relationship. Rue needs to be completely clean and okay with herself before she can fall in love with anybody, or else she's always gonna need the comfort from drugs whenever she hits a roadblock with that person that she is emotionally tethering herself to. Speaking of Jules, in the next episode we actually learn that her mother sent her to psychotherapy when she was little, and this story is very heartbreaking. It just tells that story of like her estranged relationship with her mother after that, how she's actually a lot closer to her father. But another big thing about this episode is that there is a big carnival taking place. Cal Jacobs, Nate's dad, is participating in the chili cook-off. And so at the chili cook-off, Cal is talking to McKay and he's telling McKay, you need to push yourself to your fullest potential. How do you think my chili won best chili 5 years in a row? And this is how you keep a good girl like Cassie. However, McKay goes on to tell Cal that he and Cassie are not even serious. He says that they're just chilling, even though like literally the night before that, McKay told Cassie that he loved her. So what do you mean? Like, you just told me that you love me and now you're telling people that we're just chilling? Also, speaking of this chili cook-off, Maddie ends up getting into an argument with Nate, and then she ends up getting into it with Nate's family. So she ends up like knocking the can of chili onto the ground, and then she calls Nate's mom a After this, Nate drags Maddie to the back and he chokes her out and bruises her all over her neck. Like literally when Maddie gets home, the pattern of Nate's fingers is literally bruised into her neck. But after Nate chokes Maddie, Maddie confronts Nate about the dick pics that she found on his phone. So then Nate completely switches up from this psycho who's just choked her to the innocent, confused boy act. And he starts saying like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's a really confusing time for me right now. I'm going through a lot. And he's just like saying any type of random shit to make Maddie feel sympathetic. And unfortunately, she falls for it. And I'm just like, no, baby. Tell everybody that he's gay and that he is an abusive psycho freak so that he can go to the all-males prison right where he belongs. What else happened at the carnival? Jules sees Cal at the chili cook-off and she's telling Rue like, I f***ed that guy, like I had sex with him at the motel. And Rue was like, huh? Like, what do you mean? Like, that is Nate's dad. So there's that. Also at the carnival, Kat has really been vibing and getting along with this guy right here named Ethan. So Kat and Ethan, they have a class together and they seem to really like each other. Let me tell you guys, Ethan's so sweet. He's so sweet. But at the carnival, Kat ends up seeing Ethan talking to another girl and she gets jealous. So she ends up screwing some other random guy at the carnival. After the carnival, Jules finally meets up with this guy, Tyler, that she has been falling in love with and chatting with online for the past couple months. Inevitably, Tyler is revealed to be Nate. So when Nate walks out, Jules is like, what the f is going on? What? You've been catfishing me? And then Nate reveals why he was doing any of this in the first place. So his plan is to blackmail Jules with the nude photos that she took for him. Okay, so Nate feels like since Jules had sex with his father, that she is going to try to ruin his life and ruin his family's life because obviously she's underage. So Cal can do some serious prison time for this. Now granted, he did not know that Jules was underage, but still, Cal and Nate are just both seriously fucked up. So because of this, Nate feels that Jules is gonna blab and try to ruin him and his father's life. So to make sure that she does not do that, Nate blackmails her with the nude photos that she took for him, and he tells her that he's gonna report her to the police for child pee distribution if she does not keep her mouth shut about her relationship with his dad. This whole thing is so stupid and pointless because Jules never intended on telling anybody. Like, she told Rue, yes, because like that's her best friend, but she never intended on telling anybody else. She never intended on going to the police and having Cal thrown in prison. Like, she was never gonna do any of that. So Nate, he doesn't need to be doing this, but you know, he probably enjoys it. He probably enjoys this entire process because he's psychotic and he gets off on hurting women. As we can see, by the way, he literally just choked Maddie a couple hours prior. After this meetup, Jules goes to Rue's house and confides in her. She doesn't tell her that Tyler was Nate, but she does tell her, you know, Tyler did not look like his pictures. So Rue and Jules, they end up having a little cuddle session. And in this moment, Jules realizes that she does like Rue a little bit more than a friend. So they kiss. In the next episode, we learn a little bit more about Maddie and Nate's relationship. How at first, Nate was really sweet, but slowly turned more and more toxic and abusive as he got more comfortable. And even after the choking, it's mentioned that it wasn't even the violence that scared Maddie. What scared her was the fact that no matter what Nate could do to her, she would still always love him. She has a very toxic attachment to him. But also, Maddie is not just this hopeless damsel in distress. Like, she has a little bit more control in the relationship than we may have thought. Like, for instance, she wasn't even really a virgin when she met him. That's just what she let him think. And also, she's cheated on him multiple times throughout the relationship. But after the choking, Maddie is going through quite a lot. One thing leads to another, and school authorities end up finding out that Nate choked Maddie. So the principal ends up reporting the assault to the police. At the police station, Maddie is really fighting against the police because she does not want to be responsible for getting Nate into any trouble. But you know, after a certain point of fighting, she gives up in defeat. The police take clear photos of the bruising on her neck, and then in the next room over, Nate is just lying straight through his teeth. He's like, yeah, I grabbed her arm, but not her neck. And you know, he told Cal that he did not do it. Cal sticks to this lie. You know, he's telling everybody my son did not do this, but he knows, like, he knows very well that he his son up and that his son is not normal, and he knows very well that he did this to Maddie. Anyways, did I mention that Rue has been clean for a while? Ever since the open the door crash out incident at Fez's house, Rue has been consistently meeting with her sponsor Ali, and Ali is a real one, okay? He keeps it very real with Rue. He tells her, hey, I know you love this girl Jules, but it's very toxic and it's not gonna last. Because the way Rue describes Jules to Ali, she very much describes her as if she's a drug. And yes, Rue does sincerely love Jules, but like I said before, her tethering herself to anyone romantically is just never going to be a healthy thing until she's fully clean. But for now, Rue and Jules' relationship is very close, so Rue is very happy and she's clean. She hasn't been doing any drugs. She even sends a message to Lexi apologizing for being a bad friend and how she wants to make it up to her. Okay, so Rue, Jules, and Lexi, they end up going out together. They go skating, and during this outing, Lexi ends up telling Jules that she is the reason that Rue is clean. She tells her, like, you know, you're the reason why Rue has been doing so well lately. She really loves you. And Jules does not exactly have the best reaction to this news. It seems like Jules high-key does not want to be that person for Rue, which is understandable. Like, nobody wants to be the sole responsibility for someone's happiness and healthiness. It reminds me of a quote from Ginny and Georgia season 2 where Marcus says, no one person should be responsible for your happiness. And yeah, he really ate with that because it's true. One night, Maddie and her mom are fighting over Nate. Her mom tells her that whatever she has with Nate is not real love. And Maddie fights back and she tells her mom, who are you to tell me what real love is? Like, you and dad barely even speak. And this is so real because I feel like parents give their children relationship advice, but then when the child looks at the representation of love in a relationship that they grew up around looking at, you know, their parents, it's also not a good or healthy relationship. So it can be very confusing. This is my third time rewatching Euphoria, and when I first watched it, even the second time around, I did not like any of the characters. But after watching it for the third time, I actually love Maddie. I always loved her in season 2. She was like the only character I could stand in that season, but I'm realizing that I actually really liked her in season 1 as well. She's like the definition of a girl in survival mode. She puts on this confident act, but she's not even really confident. She tells herself she's disgusting in the mirror.
I literally look disgusting.
But then at McKay's party in the first episode, when Tyler tells her she's hot, she's like, yeah, I know. And I just feel like that's just such a realistic girl experience, you know? She accepts toxic love, and if she was really confident in herself, she wouldn't accept that. And she can be a little mean sometimes, but she's also really nice and really kind-hearted, and she just has a lot of different sides and layers to her. But speaking of Maddie, after the choking, she ends up meeting with Nate in secret. Her and Nate sneak to a motel so that they can be together and sleep together without anyone seeing them. Also, everyone in town freaking hates Nate because the news about the choking spread all over town. Restaurants and different establishments like refuse to let Nate and his family in. So because of this, Nate begins to enact an evil, sinister plan to clear his name. Remember the nude photos of Jules that Nate said he was going to use against her if she told anyone about his dad? So now, instead of using the photos for that reason, he's using the photos to clear his name. Okay, so he begins to print out the photos of Jules. After printing the photos, Nate pays another visit to Tyler. Remember Tyler, the real Tyler, who Nate beat up at the beginning of the season? Yeah, so Nate goes to Tyler's apartment and he tells him, you are going to go to the police station and you're gonna say that you choked Maddie. Okay, so he is framing Tyler for the choking of Maddie. Nate tells Tyler, you're either gonna tell the police that you choked Maddie, or I'm gonna tell the police that you raped her in the pool at McKay's party. So obviously Tyler would rather go down for choking than raping, right? So Tyler goes to the police station. He tells them, I am the one who choked Maddie Perez, and Maddie backs the confession up. She says, yes, this guy Tyler is the one who choked me. Nate did not choke me. And then Nate makes Jules go in as a witness, because remember, Nate has the nude photos of her. So if she doesn't agree to back Tyler's confession, then Nate will report her for child pee distribution. So Jules agrees to go to the police station and she says, yes, I saw Tyler choke Maddie. So now Nate's name is completely clear. They all just framed this guy for something he did not do. Not that he's completely innocent, okay? Because this guy, Tyler, is 22 years old and he had sex with Maddie at McKay's party without checking her age. And that's not okay. But it's just like, damn, like first Nate beat his ass and now he's going to jail for something that he didn't do. So anyways, after this, we have a big Halloween party. Jules is crashing out, not only because of the Tyler situation, but also because of the situation with Rue and how she feels that Rue is way too reliant on her. So Jules is crashing out at the Halloween party and Rue can tell that something is wrong. So then Rue starts crashing out at the Halloween party. Also at the Halloween party, there's a guy named Daniel who is interested in Cassie. Daniel, does that name sound familiar to anyone? Daniel is the guy who went out with Kat when they were kids, but he dumped her because she gained weight from drinking 72 pina coladas. Well, during this Halloween party, Cassie is having some issues with McKay. First off, because like I mentioned before, McKay has been telling everybody that he and Cassie are just chilling, so for some reason he doesn't want to properly commit to her. But also, McKay has been letting other people's opinions get to him too much. Remember how I said before McKay and Cassie got together, all the guys were telling him that she's a slut? Even though McKay does not think that Cassie's a slut, he still treats her like one because all of the guys around him are feeding him this narrative that she is one. For example, when McKay is hanging out with Cassie, he asks her, why do you have to make everything so sexual? And there was another Halloween party that they went to at his college where Cassie wants to wear a particular costume, but he tells her, Cassie, if you wear that costume, I'm never gonna hear the end of it. And it's just like, bro, like just let your girl be herself without worrying about what other people are gonna say. So yeah, now we have this next Halloween party that everyone is at, and Cassie has been having these issues with McKay. So Cassie ends up kissing Daniel, but she doesn't want to go all the way with Daniel because technically she is still dating McKay. So Cassie tells Daniel, like, I can't have sex with you, I have a boyfriend. And when I tell you, this guy Daniel says the most disgusting words to Cassie. He's like, you really think I care about what you think or feel? You're so boring. Who do you think you are? If I can't have sex with you, then what are you good for? And as he's saying all that to her, I'm literally sitting there like, after this, Cassie goes home. Obviously, she's crying, she's very heartbroken, she's very hurt. When she arrives home, it hits her that she has not had her period in a while. So she ends up taking a pregnancy test and she is indeed pregnant with McKay's baby. She honestly had one of the best backstories in my opinion. Her story growing up as a girl, reaching puberty and her family members making these weird, inappropriate comments to her, her parents' tumultuous relationship, her mom's drinking problems, her dad's financial and drug problems, and him eventually leaving. Ugh, so real, and it really just puts into perspective a lot of her actions and characterization throughout the season. Eventually, Rue starts to peep the tension going on between Jules and Nate. So she gets on her detective and she starts putting pieces together about Tyler and about Nate and the online chatting with Jules and the fake confessions and how Nate ended up clearing his name from choking Maddie. So even though Rue is putting the pieces together and solving the puzzle, this is actually her being manic. Rue is not doing well after the great crash out at the Halloween party. So at first she's manic and then she falls into a depression where she just spends hours upon hours in her room watching Love Island to the point where she cannot even get up and use the bathroom, even though her bladder is literally about to explode in her body. So while Rue is depressed, Jules escapes her nightmare by going to visit a friend from her old school. And during this trip to visit her friend, she gets high and she hooks up with another girl. But then while Jules is high, she also starts having visions of Nate and she's like slapping him in the visions, but then she also like starts having sex with him. And I'm like, girl, do you hate him or do you kind of love him? Another thing about Nate is that he snitches on Fez, okay? Because while Rue was manic, she ended up telling Fez that Nate was up to some scheming with Jules. So then Fez talks to Nate and he says, look, I don't know what you got going on with Rue and her friend Jules, but Rue is my best friend, so I want you to stop with her and her friends. So then because of this, Nate reports and snitches on Fez for being a drug dealer. So then when the police show up to Fez's house, Fez and Ashtray, they have to get rid of all their supply. As the police are knocking on their door, Fez and Ashtray are freaking out and they're like flushing all of their drugs down the toilet, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so much money down the drain. But you know what? Fez definitely ends up getting his lick back on Nate in the next season. Cassie, her plot this episode is so sad. She tells McKay that she is pregnant, and McKay immediately starts making Cassie feel bad about it. Not that he's trying to, but he's just very real to her about how his parents are gonna kill him and that his football career, everything that they've been working for is gonna be over if they have a baby. So then Cassie starts crying, and it's very sad because you can tell that a big part of her actually wanted to have this baby. It just seems like nobody really understands Cassie. Welcome to the outfit change, but as I was saying, it seems like nobody really understands Cassie for who she really is. You know, she's always being judged, and I think a baby just would have given her like that sense of purpose and a source of love that she knew would be permanent and unconditional, especially after those scars of abandonment with her dad and that fake, purely physical, performative love that she has developed with the guys around her. So yeah, Cassie eventually does end up having that abortion. Since Fez had to flush all of his drugs, he ends up having to rob Mouse's supplier, who is like a rich doctor. So Fez robs this doctor and he ends up getting enough money for all of the drugs that he and Ashtray had to get rid of. So Fez, Ashtray, and Mouse, they're doing their drug deal, and it seems like the situation is all handled, right? But no, because all of a sudden, little Ashtray jumps out and he kills Mouse with a hammer. This event is not revealed until the beginning of season 2, but I just wanted to go ahead and say it now so that it all flows and makes sense. At the end of the semester, there is a school dance. Maddie and Nate are trying so hard to make each other jealous, but eventually at this dance, Maddie and Nate do decide to finally break it off. Also at the dance, Kat finally confesses to Ethan that she likes him, so they officially get together. After the dance, Rue and Jules are talking. They're just telling each other about how they're so done with everybody's bullshit. They're like, I hate this town, I hate everybody in it. They're just done with everything and everyone. So they make a plan to leave town together. So Rue and Jules, they pack up, they go to the train station, and they're about to leave together, but Rue ends up getting really bad anxiety and cold feet, and she does not want to leave anymore. She's like, wait, never mind, like, we did not think this through. I can't leave my sister and my mom, like, I just still am not in a good headspace to just leave. But Jules gets on the train and she's like, Rue, let's go. Like, let's leave now. But Rue does not want to go. So Jules refuses to get off the train, so the train takes off and she leaves Rue standing there crying. This is tricky because my first and also second time watching, I was really mad at Jules for doing this. I was like, why would you just leave her like that? Like, you know she's sensitive, you know she is a drug addict and she's not stable. But I also had to remember that Jules was also in a rock bottom state here as well. You know, she had just lied to the police and is being constantly blackmailed by Nate. You know, she's going through a lot, and I'm like, okay, I can understand why she needed to leave. But either way, I really do not think Jules ever loved Rue the same way that Rue loved her. It always seemed to me that ever since Rue kissed Jules for the first time, she's been kind of like forcing herself to love Rue romantically, when really deep down inside, she doesn't. So after the train incident, after Jules leaves, Rue goes home and she relapses after having been sober for 3 months. Here we get the iconic All For Us musical sequence, and the creative direction here was so peak. This is genuinely one of the best season finales I've ever seen. So yeah, that is season 1. The first few episodes were a little questionable. Like, every time I rewatch, I'm like, why are their body parts flying everywhere in every direction every 10 seconds? Like, is this really necessary? But as the episodes progressed, it genuinely just got better and better. It was such an amazing viewing experience, and by the finale, I was so ready to sink my teeth into the second season. However, However, the second season did not deliver that same experience, in my opinion. Kat's character, ruined. They did not know what the frick to do with her this season. McKay's character, ruined. Actually, I think he was only in like one scene in the entire season. Jules' character, ruined. Cassie's character, ruined. Even Nate's character gave off a different vibe in the second season that wasn't as captivating and intriguing. In the first season, I feel like Nate was like the misogynistic asshole jock psycho type, but in the second season, he was more of like a quiet, mysterious psycho, which I didn't really find as entertaining as his first characterization. But let's get into the season 2 recap. The first episode opens up with a flashback of Fez's grandmother and how she used to be this big hotshot drug dealer who taught Fez everything he knows. One day when Fez was a kid, he arrived home from school and there was just a random baby sitting in the living room. That baby was Ashtray. Apparently some lady gave Ashtray to Fez's grandmother as collateral, but she never came back to pick him up, so therefore they just kept him. Fast forward to present day, since Ashtray killed Mouse with a hammer, he and Fez need a new drug supplier, so Mouse's former partner, Custer, introduces Fez and Ashtray to this new supplier whose name is Lori. Lori is very scary, okay? She's like so eerily quiet and calm. It makes her even more frightening than Mouse. There's a New Year's Eve party and the gang is all there. Jules is back and Rue is trying her hardest to avoid her after she left her at the train station and made her relapse. Speaking of the relapse, yes, Rue is a full-on junkie again, but this time it's like 10 times worse than last season because Rue is doing like every hard drug known to man. She is doing heroin, she's doing fentanyl, she's doing it all. So at this New Year's Eve party, Rue walks into a room and she sees this guy right here named Elliot snorting coke. So she walks in on him doing these drugs and she's like, hey, I can tell you what drugs I'm doing if you tell me what drugs you're doing. So therefore, Rue and Elliot get together at this party, they become friends, and they do drugs together. Obviously, this is very bad. The last person Rue needs in her life is another druggie enabling her behavior, but here we are. So yes, Elliot is a new character this season and he is played by my king, Dominic Fike. Dominic Fike is my favorite artist. He is my favorite solo artist and has been way before he started acting, so I was very excited when they announced that he was going to be in the show. But I'm gonna just tell you guys right now that I think his character is so boring and so pointless. Literally all he did was come in and f shit up. If you guys can think of any other purpose that this character served, then please let me know. Cassie. She is obviously traumatized from everything she went through last semester. I mean, I can't even imagine harboring that much heartbreak. Like, she has so many guys saying so many mean and degrading things to her, unstable relationship with McKay, and then her ending up having to have an abortion at the end of it. Like, she has been through a lot. So this season, she's sad, she's confused, she's conflicted. So conflicted that she decides to do the worst, most stupid thing on earth, which is starting a relationship with Nate Jacobs, her best friend's ex-boyfriend and abuser. Do I feel bad for everything Cassie went through last semester and everything she's been through her entire life? Absolutely. But in no way does any of that excuse her dating the guy who abused her best friend. Even without the abuse, you just don't date your best friend's ex. That's bad enough. So given the toxicity that Nate had with her best friend, it just makes it 10 times worse. Lexi, Cassie's sister, and Fez get to talking. Oh my gosh, what is this? This is an unlikely pair. The quiet, overlooked little sister and the town drug dealer? But oh my gosh, do they have the most undeniable chemistry. And the way their conversation flows is just so natural. I could literally sit and watch these two talk for hours. But Fez has some business to attend to. Remember how last semester Nate called the police on Fez and I said that he's gonna get his lick back? Yeah, now it's time. Fez ends up beating the shit out of Nate at this New Year's Eve party and it is so satisfying. Rue and Jules finally run into each other. They talk and they basically yearn for each other throughout the whole party, like they're looking at each other across the room. Eventually Rue just approaches Jules and she tells her, I still love you. Let's just put everything from last semester behind us because I want to be with you. So Rue and Jules finally get together officially. Yay! Right? No. The relationship is even more toxic than last season because Rue is not actively trying to stay sober like she was last time. Now she's just high all the time and lying to Jules about it. Like literally she will tell Jules that she's at an NA meeting, but really she is at Elliot's house getting high. And speaking of Elliot, Jules is a little bit jealous because she feels like he and Rue have crushes on each other. Speaking of relationships, Kat and Ethan are still going strong. They're still together. Maddie is telling Kat about how jealous she is of her because Ethan is so sweet and not an abusive psycho like Nate, right? However, Ethan's sweet nature is kind of exactly the thing that she hates about him. She's very bored, very unimpressed by Ethan. Deep down, Kat really wants a guy who emulates one of her characters from her erotica fan fiction. Someone who's gonna choke her and rip her clothes off in a medieval forest or something like that. Lexi, she starts to take a little more of the spotlight this season. And thank God for that because she's very relatable on a level that is really not the same as all the other characters. Not to say that any of the other girls are not relatable. I think they're all very relatable and that almost any girl watching can relate in some way to either Maddie, Cassie, Jules, Rue, or Kat, but Lexi just kind of has this everyday type of relatability. We see how she's struggled with being in the background most of her life, living in Cassie's shadow, afraid to speak up, afraid to stand up for herself. So this semester, she is on a mission to overcome that through her creativity. She loves to write, she loves the theater, so she ends up writing a play that kind of tells the story of her life, but also through the eyes of the other people in her life. On the way home from getting high at Elliot's house, Rue is riding her bike and she ends up seeing Cassie getting into Nate's truck and kissing him. So yes, now Rue knows about this little sneaky link that Nate and Cassie have, but for now, she does keep her mouth shut about it. Emphasis on for now. Maddie, on the other hand, is fighting for her life, okay? She is fighting herself not to get back together with Nate. One half of her wants to give into that toxic attachment that she has with him and to go back to that comfortability with him, but also the other half of her knows very well that he is not good for her and that she needs to stop chasing this dangerous, unhealthily, overly passionate love. I'm very proud of her for fighting this because as much as we know something isn't good for us, if we're comfortable in that toxicity, it can honestly be hard to get away from it and start building healthier habits. But literally all season long, Maddie is telling herself that, you know, she deserves better than Nate, and she's actively having conversations with other characters like Kat and Jules to confirm that self-worth for her and to confirm that she can have a healthy relationship. In the third episode of season 2, we get a backstory on Cal Jacobs and how when he was in high school, he had a very intense relationship with his best friend, Derek. Even though Cal met Nate's mom, Marcia, around junior year and was in a relationship with her, he very clearly was in love with his friend Derek. So one night after high school graduation, Cal and Derek went out to go dancing, and in the midst of the dancing and the passion and the emotion, Cal and Derek end up kissing. And the way that they kissed, you can just tell that these two have been yearning for each other for a very long time. But unfortunately, Marcia got pregnant not too long after this. So yikes, no happily ever after with Derek, because now Cal is stuck. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason why Nate and his entire family is so up. It's because his parents do not love each other. Cal does not want to be living the life he is currently living. And this is why he spends all of his free time hooking up with people that are mostly from the LGBT community and having sex with them at motels. This is a message to just please be careful with people that you don't really love, because if you end up getting trapped into life with that person, it's not fun. It's very depressing and debilitating. And Cal ended up having to essentially live this double life that ended up really screwing up his entire family dynamic. While Lexi is staying up until 4 a.m. writing and working on her play, her sister Cassie is getting up at 4 a.m. for a completely different reason. And that reason is because she is intensely obsessed with Nate. The two of them have been casually hooking up, but Cassie has this really unhealthy relationship with men and she craves complete validation from them, right? So even though Nate does not give a about her, Cassie wakes up at 4 a.m. every single morning to get ready with the sole intention of Nate noticing her at school, even if it's just for like 1 second, she is on top of the world, and it's very sad. Rue's addiction gets to a point where she needs drugs like literally all the time, every second of every day. So she comes up with this really stupid, dangerous plan to get large amounts of drugs for free. So Rue pays a visit to Lori. Remember Lori, the scary, quiet, calm lady who is Fez and Ashtray's new supplier, right? So Rue goes to Lori's house and she tells her, I have this great business plan that could make us both a lot of money. For some reason, Lori agrees to the plan. I'm not going to explain the plan because I really honestly don't understand it, but it really doesn't matter anyways. What matters is that Lori agrees to the plan, so she gives Rue a suitcase full of $10,000 worth of drugs. And so Rue is like, great, I'm gonna sell these drugs and we're gonna make a lot of money. And then Lori tells Rue, if you screw me over, then I can have you sold to some very dangerous people. But that doesn't scare Rue. She takes the suitcase full of drugs and she's so happy. She's like, yes, I have all these drugs that I can just do every day now. So now that Rue has all these drugs from Lori, she's doing them all the time and she's just so high to the point where she is numb. Like literally everything is numb. So one day Jules is like going down on Rue and she can't feel anything, so she ends up faking the climax and it's just very embarrassing. At this point, like the connection between her and Jules is like so non-existent. There's nothing there because Rue is 100% high throughout the whole relationship. And like I said, I don't even think Jules was ever in love with Rue more than a friend to begin with. It feels so forced and so disconnected. Meanwhile, Jules has been getting closer and closer with Elliot. So if you put the pieces together, Jules ends up cheating on Rue with Elliot. Even when the three of them are hanging out together, when Rue goes to the bathroom, Jules and Elliot start kissing. And I'm like, y'all are really gonna sit here and make out as Rue is in the next room over? I don't like that. There is one scene where Cassie and Nate get into an argument and it's like the most cringe, insufferable scene in the entire show. It just makes no sense. Cassie is trying to justify their relationship by saying that he and Maddie are toxic together and they shouldn't be together, so therefore she is preventing them from being together by being with Nate herself. And then she also says that she doesn't care if Maddie finds out about them being together because she is crazier than Maddie. Okay, sure. Cal. As I mentioned, he has basically been living a lie ever since he got married and started a family with Nate's mom. So one night, it just all comes to a boiling point. Cal takes his old truck that he used to have in high school. He takes it out, he goes for a drive. He goes back to the spot where he and Derek kissed that one time in high school, and he just relives all the memories. He yearns for Derek and he imagines him being there back in high school with him, and he's like, Derek, I thought I lost you. And it's just so sad. You can just tell how much he longs for that life that he could have had. Cal returns home and he basically tells his entire family that he hates his life. He tells Nate and his brother that he never wanted either of them and how he just wants to be free to have sex with man or woman or whoever he wants. And then he pisses in the foyer and then he leaves the house and he never comes back. Eventually, Elliot ends up telling Jules that Rue is not sober and she has not been for this entire semester. So in the next episode, Jules ends up telling Rue's mom that Rue has not been sober. Jules and Leslie together, they find the suitcase and they flush all the drugs down the toilet. Obviously, this is not good because that bag was full of the drugs that Lori gave to her, and you know, she's supposed to be selling these drugs and making money for Lori, which she has not been doing. She's just been taking all the drugs herself. So now that Jules and Leslie have gotten rid of those drugs, Rue is going to be in some big trouble with Lori in the next season. But for now, as I just mentioned, Leslie has found out from Jules that Rue is doing drugs. So Rue ends up completely flipping out on Leslie and Gia. She's like kicking down the door, she's crying, she's freaking out. She's like, where's the suitcase? What did you do with it? It's not mine. And whew, it's just really crazy. After Rue crashes out on her mom and her sister, it turns out that Jules is also sitting in the living room. So then Rue crashes out on Jules and she tells her that she is a vampire who sucks the life out of people and how she doesn't love her the way that she loves Jules. So yeah, Rue is just getting a lot of negative emotions off of her chest. But I do really commend Jules for telling Leslie about Rue because homegirl was literally doing heroin and we cannot have that. Anyways, after this entire fiasco, Leslie tries to drive Rue to a hospital, but Rue ends up jumping out of the car in the middle of the street, and she is just running through towns on some Looney Tunes shit for the entire episode. In the middle of her running across town, she ends up going to Cassie and Lexi's house. Maddie and Kat are also hanging out there. Long story short, Cassie says something that pisses Rue off, so then Rue says, "Hey Cass, how long have you been f***ing Nate Jacobs?" Yikes. So now Maddie knows about her best friend's affair with her ex. Rue runs around town some more, and eventually she ends up at Lori's house, where Lori injects her with some morphine, and it's pretty scary. So in the morning, after realizing the scary situation that she just put herself in, Rue finally comes to her senses and she goes back home, where Leslie takes care of her, but unfortunately Rue starts experiencing withdrawal, and these withdrawal scenes, they're pretty brutal. One thing that this season does do well is showing the dark sides of drug abuse. Season 1, everything looks fun, pretty glittery, but season 2, they're gonna drag you back to reality. Next episode, Cassie is whining to her family about how she is the victim in the situation with Nate, how everybody should stop judging her because when she slept with Nate, he and Maddie were not together. Like, that makes her decision any more ethical. And Cassie's mom, Suze, is not falling for it. She's like, girl, you did an awful thing. And it's one thing to do what you did, but it's another to act innocent. And I'm like, thank you, because at least we have one sane mom. Because Nate's mom, she is genuinely awful. Do you know what she says to Nate after finding out that he is sleeping with Cassie? She says, looks like Maddie's the now. Remember how she called me a at the carnival last year? And when you grabbed her and pulled her to the side, I was thinking, that's my boy. That's my boy? That is what you were thinking as your son choked and abused her girlfriend? Oh, and now you're proud of the fact that he is sleeping with her best friend? Yeah, Nate's mom is literally the definition of a misogynistic boy mom, and it needs to be stopped. To make the situation even worse, Cassie still goes back to Nate after this, and she doubles down. She walks hand in hand with Nate throughout school, like she just doesn't even care. Custer. Do we remember Custer? Custer is Mouse's former partner who introduced Fez and Ashtray to Lori. So at first, he was like an associate of Fez and Ashtray's, but unfortunately, Custer starts cooperating with the police to bust Fez and Ashtray for the murder of Mouse. Now, this especially sucks for Fez because Fez is just starting to hit it off even more with Lexi. They've been talking to each other a lot. Their conversations are so pure and natural. They watch movies together. They talk about their futures, their dreams, their aspirations, their beliefs. They have so much potential to have just a great relationship together. But unfortunately, we got this guy Custer working with the police trying to bring Fez down. Speaking of crazy, Nate ends up holding Maddie at gunpoint. Yeah, I said it. Because at the end of season 1, Maddie ended up finding a copy of Cal's sex tape with Jules. So Nate ends up holding her at gunpoint to scare her into giving him back the CD with the sex tape on it. Just when I think Nate cannot get any more psychotic, he always shows out. He shows up and he shows out. Now that we're approaching the end of the semester, the end of the season, it's time for Lexi to put on the play that she's been writing. The only thing I have to say about this is Ethan's supremacy. After Kat breaks up with him, he decides to channel his emotions by playing a couple roles, and he does so well. That is my king right there. One of his standout performances is in an act that is about gay jocks, and this act is very clearly targeting Nate. So when Nate sees this, he gets very offended, he storms out, and then he breaks up with Cassie. Now, since Cassie is obsessed with Nate, she storms back into the theater. She has this crazy look in her eyes. She's breathing on the glass like she's about to go in and really do something, but she just ends up getting her ass beat by Maddie. And I'm just like, oh, I thought you were crazier than Maddie. After Nate leaves Lexi's play, he pays a visit to his father, and Cal essentially apologizes for letting his double life screw up his entire family, but Nate does not accept this apology, and he tells Cal that he wants revenge. So Nate all of a sudden pulls out a flash drive from his pocket, and he tells him that all of Cal's sex tapes are on this flash drive. And then the police pull up and they arrest Cal. So Nate has just reported Cal to the police. And remember, on these sex tapes is the one with Jules, and Jules is underage, and Cal has probably had sex with some other people who are underage too. So Cal, yeah, he's about to spend his life in prison. And it's like, yeah, him getting arrested is satisfying, but also I want Nate in jail too. I want him behind bars, not just his father. Now for the grand finale. The whole entire time at Lexi's play, the seat that Fez was supposed to be sitting in is empty. So the whole time Lexi is looking and she's really sad. She's like, where's Fez? Fez was actually on his way to go to the play. He had his nice suit on. He had his bouquet of roses for Lexi. But right before he's about to leave, Custer shows up. Fez thinks nothing of it, but as we know, Custer is cooperating with the police about the murder of Mouse. So that means Custer is probably wearing a wire and the police are probably on their way. So Fez is trying to leave for the play, but Custer is telling him, no, the police found Mouse's body, and he's basically just trying to make Fez talk and make him say anything that can serve as a confession. But then all of a sudden, Ashtray gets up and he stabs Custer in the neck with a box cutter. Yeah, Ashtray has really just been killing people without thinking. So not only do we have the Mouse murder that the police already know about and are on their way to arrest them for right now, but now we got another body because Ashtray just killed Custer. So after this, Fez tells Ashtray, when the police get here, I am going to take the fall for this, okay? I killed Custer, you did not do this. That is the story that we are sticking with. However, Ashtray is too loyal to Fez. Pretty sure he feels indebted to him. I mean, Fez is the one who has been looking after him ever since he was a baby. So of course, Ashtray is not gonna go for that plan. So Ashtray locks himself in the bathroom with some firearms, and then the SWAT team shows up. A very long and crazy shootout happens. After the shootout, one of the officers literally executes Ashtray. Like, he genuinely aims the red dot at this child's forehead and he takes him out. I don't have anything to say. Like, I have no words. I'm very curious to see how they're gonna proceed from this in season 3, especially with the real life death of Angus Cloud, who played Fez. This, with his character supposed to be like being with Lexi, I don't like, how are they gonna proceed with this storyline in the next season? I'm so curious to see. Once Lexi's play ends, Jules goes up to Rue and she tells her like, hey, I know you're upset with me, but I just want you to know that I love you. Rue kisses Jules on the forehead to signify that she still loves her too, but then Rue walks away. So Rue is finally putting herself first, and she is choosing her health and her sobriety over her romantic fixation. It is revealed that Rue was able to stay clean throughout the end of the school year, and then that is the end of season 2. So I would love to know you guys' thoughts on it, as well as season 1 and just the entire show as a whole. Your maybe predictions for the 3rd season. Are you excited? Are you not expecting much? I want to know. I want to discuss. So yes, thank you guys for watching this recap and discussion on Euphoria. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video.